remember एक दिनमा 2 करोड 3 करोडको टर्नओभर हुन्थ्यो नेप्सीमा होल डेमा.
Our guest today is Santosh Pokharel. Santosh is one of the first CFA charter holders from Nepal.
A constant query that I get is दाइ कहिले बेच्ने.
Santosh currently works as a private sector specialist at Asian Development Bank in Manila.
नेपालबाट बाहिर बस्दाखेरि how difficult is it to actually invest in Nepal?
Costco and Amazon, they're a very good example of a concept called scale economies shared. If you look at the financial crisis, one bank that really stood out was JP Morgan Chase.
Right.
When you sell it, you're not making one decision. You have to make a two decision. Which stock to sell and what do you want to buy with that kind of a capital.
Apart from his job, Santosh loves to follow Nepal's stock market. He invests in it, and he also loves to read blogs and articles on value investing.
A normal investment portfolio in Nepal has around 8 stocks. So the company had no debt. Its revenue, bottom line, everything was growing. It also had a very good product in the product called Golden Oak. But despite that was not reflected in the valuation back then. Usual suspect is Buffett and Munger. So Reddit is a good source to generate ideas.
Have you ever tried trading and what are your views on that?
In this episode, we discuss a lot of interesting topics such as his investment philosophy, his success, his failures, the influence of Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger on his life, the books he recommends to young investors, his view on the capital markets of Nepal, and so much more. So sit back and enjoy the episode.
Namaste and welcome to Investor Pod. I'm Arpan Khanal, founder and CEO of National Capital. In this podcast series, we sit down with the best minds in investing and we explore their story, their investment process, their success, failures, and how they allocate capital with discipline in order to create long-term wealth for themselves. Through this podcast series, we want to bring high-quality conversations around investment and business for our viewers so that our viewers can learn from them. So sit back and enjoy the conversation. Santosh, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Arpan, for having me.
Yeah. So I think I just want to jump right in. You investing much interested? How did you get interested in this whole thing?
So I'll probably give a very broad, rounded answer to that. So म चाहिँ born and brought up in Kathmandu. यहीँ हुर्किएँ हैन. I did my schooling here. Ani high school, last 2 years of high school, I did it in Kathmandu University, ISC gare. ISC, I finished in 1999. So 1999, 2000 was the whole kind of a dot-com bubble, the mania around that. So I used to read a lot. And त्यो बेलामा चाहिँ the whole exposure to stock market, that started around that. But formal investing from my own, it started around 2008, 2009 after I came back from US, after I did my master's and so on. I was doing my CFA around that time. So that was where I got interested into stock market here and I started investing here. So investing experience formal चाहिँ त्यहाँबाट सुरु गरेको. But I mean, even before that, long before that, I was following the market and then so on and so forth.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, that's very interesting. I really want to understand अलिकति पछाडि लिएर जाम हैन. तपाईँले touched upon your education. Slightly walk us through तपाईँले what did you study and what was your career like in terms of education?
So, as I said earlier, I did ISC from Kathmandu University. त्यसपछि I went and did bachelor's in information system from KCM. KCM back then was kind of an up and coming institution, but they were offering, I think, only institution offering 4 years degree in undergraduate. So त्यहाँ graduate भएँ. Then I worked for Kathmandu Post for a bit.
Yes.
And then while I was working in Kathmandu Post, I pursued GRE. And then I went to the States, did a master's in financial economics.
Right.
And then did another master's in economics from University of Virginia. Until Belama, like in between, I got acquainted with CFA. One of my professor was a CFA charter holder, and he used to kind of give us kind of problem sets, CFA related problem set as a part of our normal curriculum. So I was kind of interested to pursue that. Ani त्यो like दुईटा masters economics मा गरिसकेपछि like I was more inclined into getting into the finance field. अनि CFA seemed like a kind of a natural choice to pursue. अनि त्यो बेलामा पनि like still is it's kind of one of the kind of a most sought after kind of certification in the finance investing field, right? अनि अनि I started CFA when I was in States. अनि complete चाहिँ यहाँ आएपछि गरेँ. I got my charter holder, I think sometime in 2011.
Right. So again, this is your academic side, and यति बेलासम्म तपाईँले हुन्छ नि आफ्नो फाइनेन्समा इन्ट्रेस्ट डेभलप गरिसक्नु भएको थियो होइन. At what point did you think that I want to start investing, and what was that first investing experience like? Inspiration कहाँबाट आयो त्यो अलिकति भनिदिनु.
So again, I first bought my stock. I first bought a stock probably in 2008 or 2009. Right. But having said that, मलाई पहिलादेखि नै interest थियो. I used to follow local market. I used to also follow international market. होइन. So that interest in investing has been there right from my I would say late teenage years. It's just that first investment I only did around 2008, 2009. So when I came back from States, 2008 was when there was like this peak kind of a bull market. The Nepal index had gone to 1100. The Standard Charter was trading around 9,000 and so on, right? Yes. So त्यो बेलामा like just first fresh out of grad school, के गर्ने भन्दाखेरि one of the thing was I wanted to take up investing, right? Apart from like doing job investing, and that's how like it started. So त्यो बेलामा I think the main stocks that were commercial banks. Right. There were a few development banks. Right. अनि I remember buying Vivor Bank stock. Vivor Bank was probably one of the first stock that I bought, and it was not a good experience. Right. But yeah, I think so that's where I started, and the process has evolved over the last like 10-15 years right. in terms of my investing experience.
So I think that first crash is always very memorable, and yeah. I think it teaches you and takes you along the right route, right? Yeah. All right, great. Ani, the first job that you did, was it at Laxmi Capital?
No, so when I came back from States, I worked for around 1 year with NIBL, Nepal Investment Bank. त्यहाँ काम गरेँ, and then I went to Laxmi Capital. Right. I worked in Laxmi Capital. I think I was the first kind of a staff in Laxmi Capital. Right. Laxmi Capital त्यो बेलामा was I think a third or fourth merchant bank. Right. B थियो, Novel Invest थियो, and then maybe Laxmi Capital was the third one. So it was an interesting experience. We started Laxmi Capital 2010. 2010-ish. त्यो बेलामा like त्यो deep market correction भइरहेको थियो होइन. So from the NEPSE at 1100 gone down to I think 500 600 level मा थियो. अनि
it was below that. I think 300 को level जतिमा थियो.
And the 300 level it came around like 2011 को end मा होइन. So this was 2010 होइन. अनि so but yeah, working in Laxmi Capital, so coming up with like a new product, coming up with standard operating procedure. So we basically started with a clean slate, right? So there was nothing, right. No kind of a precedent to follow, and so on. So coming up with a new standing operating procedure, kind of investment agreement for portfolio management services. Right. How do you kind of record like various transactions in the system? So I worked with a company called Info Developers to kind of have in-house kind of software for portfolio management system, and I understand now Info Developers have kind of marketed that throughout throughout Nepal in terms of a lot of right. other merchant banks use that software. So that was a very interesting experience. But I think one thing that I realized back then was because the market back then was so shallow, very limited activity. Yeah. Hardly, I remember एक दिनमा 2 करोड 3 करोड को turnover हुन्थ्यो नेप्सेमा whole day मा हैन. अनि so very limited investor interest. त्यो अहिले जुन equity culture छ नेपालमा त्यस्तो खालको equity culture थिएन हैन. So it's very difficult to kind of convince a client to invest. Right. So yeah, I think but it was a very good learning experience.
Early days, right? And yeah. त्यहाँबाट चाहिँ you made a switch to IFC Nepal, obviously of the World Bank group हैन. So त्यो switch चाहिँ किन गर्नुभयो, and what was your role at World Bank?
So again, I mean it it was not something that I was actively looking for. Laxmi Capital, as I said, while it was a good experience, it was very limited activity in terms of capital market, portfolio management services. So it so happened that I came across this opportunity at IFC, part of World Bank Group, and I was there for almost 3 years. I was involved in terms of so IFC does equity debt investment
in private sector.
In private sector, so IFC को लागि business development activities are going. What are the potential investee companies? You talk with them, you help with due diligence. So again, my background in terms of finance, financial sector, CFA, so that helped in terms of doing that job at IFC, and it was a good experience.
Great. And त्यसपछि then you obviously moved to ADB, again similar kind of an organization, you know? So again, like beginning ma topic intro ma bhane jasto. So tell us, what exactly do you do at ADB, and that transition over the past 10 years? What has your role been in current, getting to what you currently do?
So, so after a few years in IFC, I moved to ADB's headquarters in Manila. And त्यहाँ पनि private sector related काम गरिरहेको छु. So I've been there for the last 10 years. So I've worked in financial sector there, trade and supply chain finance. I've done work related to PPP, public-private partnership. अहिले चाहिँ I work as a principal private sector development specialist, and my role is how we can support private sector development in member countries in Asia and Pacific. So by private sector development, it could be either policy reforms that kind of creates an enabling environment for private sector, or it could be helping create bankable projects that can be taken to a market that private sector can participate and then build and operate, or it could be downstream kind of actual financing to private sector entities. So it's an interesting work. I've been with ADB for the last 10 years, as you said, and then it's been a challenging but very rewarding experience.
Right. And during all this time, you've been investing in Nepal's stock market, right?
Yeah. So just as a disclaimer, as I say, I'm representing myself. I'm not representing my institution. Right. So my views are my own, and my investing experience is different from my professional work career. So for me, investing and my professional experience, those are two different things.
Right.
But having said that, investing is something that I'm very passionate about, and I do it. In Nepal, I've also started doing it outside in other countries. For example, I'm based in Philippines, so I invest in the Philippine stock market on my own, on a personal capacity, right? And I also invest in the US stock market. Yeah.
Great. So Nepal, how difficult is it to actually invest in Nepal?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question. मलाई चाहिँ कस्तो लाग्छ भन्देखि it actually helps me जस्तो लाग्छ क्या. So whenever I come to Nepal 2 or 3 times a year. Ani whenever I come here, I meet people like you. I also meet people from friends and family circle, right? Ani त्यो बेलामा चाहिँ there's a lot of noise about like हुन्छ नि यस्तो भइराछ नेपालमा यस्तो like this. So that noise. When I'm in Manila or when I'm in a different country, I'm not exposed to that noise. I read a company's annual report. I read a company's quarterly report. And then based on that, I make a kind of informed decision, right? So for me, not being in Nepal, doesn't really kind of affect my investing philosophy, my investing process. For me, it actually helps because I'm detached from the daily noise that you get exposed to if you're like meeting too many people, right? So you could get exposed to too many information. So for me, I think it's actually helped me filter a lot of kind of information and then
take a long-term
view. Take a long-term view and also kind of sometimes also take a contrarian view from what everyone is taking here in the local market.
Right. So that's something like what Warren Buffett used to do in Omaha, and John Templeton, I think, Bahamas. So it just helps you, separate the noise from the signals once in investing, right? When I started to invest in Nepal, a lot of the people, they told me that the value investing techniques that I use or what I learned in the CFA program would not work in Nepal. They told me things like,
बाहिर पढेको यहाँ नेपालमा कामै लाग्दैन, नेपालको बजार हल्लाको बेसिसमा चल्छ, यहाँ खेलाडीहरूले मार्केट चलाउँछन्, lot of this. I ignored what they said. I continued to do my research on companies. I identified good companies. I bought them at a very cheap price. And as a result, over the past 7 to 8 years, we've made very good returns for ourselves, our families, and our friends. Now, at National Capital, using the same technique that we use to manage our money, we also provide services to other people who don't have time or expertise but are looking for professional money managers in order to manage their wealth. So, if you're someone who doesn't have time or expertise and you're looking for professional money managers in order to invest your money in the stock market, please get in touch with us. Our numbers are provided below, or you can visit our website and you can find more information on our website.
Okay, so carrying on our conversation along with coffee now. So, kun investors are they've had a major impact in your investing style?
So Suruma, of course, I mean, the usual suspect is Buffett and Munger, you know?
Right.
So whole investing philosophy, Buffett and Munger, have been influenced a lot by both of them. Not just investment, I think just like
The way they
overall
conduct their
life
affairs, yeah.
overall life principles. I think and it's been kind of exemplary to see them, I mean, carry out the way they are for the last 70, 80 years, right? So Buffett and Munger, definitely. This back, I think there are like many others. I mean, I follow Howard Marks, for example, Joel Greenbelt. अहिले recently influence भएको चाहिँ Nick Sleep,
Right,
the Nomad Partners.
Right.
मैले so I've read, of course you must have also read the Nomad partnership letters starting from I think 2001, 2002 till 2013, 14.
Right.
Yeah?
Well,
अनि दुईटा they've, I mean, for most of the time, Nomad Partnership, they were invested in 3 stocks:
Right.
Costco, Amazon, and Berkshire.
right.
Ani Costco and Amazon, they're a very good example of a concept called scale economies shared भन्ने हैन त्यो मोडल बिजनेस मोडल एकदम राम्रोसँग एक्जिक्युट गरेको चाहिँ Costco र Amazonले हो. Costco को founder Jim Sinegal र Jeff Bezos, who's Amazon founder, I think they've both kind of embraced this concept of scale economies shared. And the reason I've started liking Nick Sleep is because if you go back to 2003, 2004 को
In his initial days, yeah.
Initial days मा उसले त्यो concept of so यो जेफ बेजोस र जिम सेनेगलले त त्यो बिजनेस मोडलले आफ्नो कम्पनी कन्डक्ट गर्यो हैन,
Yeah.
which is good. Tara Nick Sleep was able to kind of identify that these two companies were kind of following this model, and this model kind of can lead to what we call as a moat, right? So moat company like moat dine long-term durability, long-term competitive advantage dine concept हो भनेर उले त्यो बेलामा नै recognize गर्यो हैन. He was able to act on it. In fact, 2008 मा जुन बेलामा त्यो financial crisis भयो, Amazon had a drawdown of around 50% or 60%. त्यो बेलामा Nick Sleep actually he doubled down. He had so much conviction in terms of the ability of Jeff Bezos to execute this scale economics shared हैन. अब अहिले आएर like I mean it's easier with the benefit of the hindsight say that oh these are amazing companies भन्न. It's easier हैन to say that, but to able to at that point in time to able to kind of
develop that conviction.
Develop that conviction and actually own the stocks through those kind of turbulent times, and I think it was great to see that. So yeah, now I think I mean Costco is trading the PE of 50. Amazon is also, I mean it's like like few years ago like had like a highest market cap, you know. So now I think these are like a very well known, very established companies. But back then, I mean there was still a very kind of I won't say like relatively unknown, but they were still navigating this various like challenging times, right? And to own those companies during those times. I think it shows like what kind of investor he was, and so a lot of people now kind of follow Nick Sleep. Although he's a bit of a recluse, he doesn't come out and
I don't think so. There's this one photograph of him, if I'm not mistaken, and he doesn't come out much again. And I think his letters got really viral during the 2020 pandemic time, because people started sharing it in the value investing and it just blew up. But I think anyone who's looking to be an investor, I think those are letters you don't want to miss. I think after being introduced to Buffett, Munger, and their disciples, and so is Nick Sleep ultimately, I think somewhere on that Thulu revelation was actually the Nick Sleep letters. I mean, it was such a revelation that even someone like Mohnish Pabrai said, I'm going to change my entire investing style. And he started following great companies instead of following great bargains. Because he felt that with great companies, your activity can just be minimized drastically. Whereas to find great bargains, you just have to keep doing a lot of things to keep finding them, and cigar butt investing style. Invest karyo, bargain closes in, you move out. Whereas with great companies, I think you invest and then you just leave it there. And I also want to touch upon what you just said regarding valuations. I think these companies like Amazon and Costco, investing is difficult, because you don't know who's an imposter and who's actually a good company. And with these companies, one thing I've realized is, at present, they always look like they're trading at a very high multiple or a valuation. Right? So let's say Costco, even a few years back when I was following, 25, 30, 35 PE ma trade kar raha hunthyo. Amazon again similar, But the thing is, in your future earnings growth is so high huncha, given that they execute the business so well, that at that point of time, you always, in hindsight, you get to realize that, oh, it was really cheap at that point of time. Maybe I should have bought it then. A lot of investors, they actually struggle with that philosophy of paying slightly more for a great company business. But I think if you can inculcate that into your investment philosophy, I think it helps a lot. That's something even Mohnish Pabrai says, I have trouble. I think in a more recent video, he talks about Ferrari. He says it's such a great business, but I know it's a great business. I know why it's a great business, but I still have trouble paying up slightly more for Ferrari. That's something I'm still working on.
So talking about Mohnish Pabrai, so I actually invested in, Mohnish I don't know whether you know this website called Datorama, so where you can see all the holdings of all the major investors, right? Yeah. So and I usually go to the site to see like what are the major investors holding. Yeah. So it was 2014, 2015, around that time, Mohnish Pabrai's, I think 50% the holding was in one stock for Fiat Chrysler. Yes. And that was before they spun off Ferrari. Okay? So for Ferrari, I think spun off around 2015, 2016. Oh. And I had actually kind of coattailed Mohnish Pabrai and invested in Fiat, and it worked out like very well in terms of writing his investment thesis and investing in and in case of, and I think Mohnish was a very great good friend with Sergio Marchionne, who used to be the Fiat co-CEO. He died a few years ago. So I think they had this very good friendship, and Mohnish kind of invested into that company. Now, I just want to go back to your Costco and Amazon. So Jim Senegal ko a very interesting anecdotes. Okay? So and how this helps the company in the long term. And usually a lot of businesses they have a short term mindset. Mm-hmm. So I think there was like 10 years ago or 15 years ago, Costco was selling a pair of Calvin Klein jeans around $29 or something like that, right? So that $29 is your cost plus certain margin, right? And someone brought a deal where they could save like $7 on the cost. Right. So when you get a deal like that, a lot of founders, a lot of companies, what they do is they try to capture that as a profit. True. Right? And then they say like you tend to maximize. So now you
increase your margins.
Yeah, you increase your margins.
Because the costs have decreased.
Yeah. But what Jim Senegal did was that he passed that 100% of that saving to the customers. Yes. So he lowered the price from $29 to $22. And I mean, a lot of people will say that's a foolish decision, but it actually is not, right? So you have to have that second order thinking. So I mean Costco ko motto is like customer first. Like we always give low prices every day, right? True. So that has helped to kind of Costco is, when people shop at Costco, they're very fanatic about shopping in Costco, right? And it's because of that philosophy of getting low price every day. Yeah. So yeah, I think that's a good kind of example of how Costco does that.
I think in Nick Sleep Collector, I mean, we can go on and on about Nick. I mean, we can have an entire podcast series on Nick Sleep Collectors, and I mean, it's so great. He talks about, I think, AirAsia, again, AirAsia, and then in US you have Southwestern Airlines. You know, in India now you have Indigo, who's doing a similar model in Sunny. So every time they optimize efficiency, they save cost, but they never increase the margins. Okay, what they do is just cost save, so they pass it on to the customers. The customers are happy. More customers come in because of that. Then there are larger pool of people, and then I mean that virtuous cycle.
Yeah,
it just goes on and on and on. We can, so I think I want to come back to the podcast or other topics as well. Apart from Nick Sleep and stuff, are there some really interesting books that you've read that have influenced your investing style?
So yeah, I mean,
Maybe one or two that you can talk about.
Okay, if it's just one or two, one is Barbarians at the Gate. It's not an investing book per se. It's more about the culture of the Wall Street during the 80s. So it's more about the greed and gluttony in the Wall Street, right? So it's about the largest LBO back then, 30 billion. So KKR took over RGR Nabisco. So it's a very fascinating book about business, finance, greed, and so on and so forth. There's even a movie that's based out of the out of that book. So I think that's one.
Yes.
The other one would be so I'm a big fan of Jamie Dimon.
Fantastic man.
So there's a book called Last Man Standing. So it came out, I think, 2008, 2009, right after the global financial crisis. So if you look at the financial crisis, one bank that really stood out was JP Morgan Chase. Right. They navigated it better than any other financial institution. They acquired Bear Stearns, they acquired Wachovia, I think they also acquired WAMU. So they were able to kind of, get all these.
Everyone was struggling.
Exactly, right? So that book is about, so Jamie Dimon at like whole life his two career, one at Citigroup. So together with Sandy Will, he established the Citigroup, the big Citigroup through all this merger and acquisition. And then he had a fallout with Sandy Will, and then later on he joined Bank One, and then they merged with JP Morgan, and then he's been able to kind of make JP Morgan what it is today. So it's again a good book about banking, about life in general. Yes. I think those two books. There are other. I'm a big fan of Snowball also. Right. I also like Poor Charlie's Almanac. The last book that I read and really liked was Pulak Prasad. What I learned about investing from Darwin.
What I learned about investing from Darwin. One of the best books. Actually, Nick Sleep Collector, the next really good book that I read was what I learned about investing from Pulak Prasad, and I mean another great book, right? Okay, so now I want to come to the core topic of investing in Nepal's stock market. How do you generate ideas? How do you run these screeners? Do you speak to people? What's your process of generating ideas for Nepal's stock market?
So Nepal's stock market I don't run screeners here. So it's more about so I follow almost all the companies. When I say I follow almost all the companies, I scan through their kind of quarterly reports and annual reports and so on. So it gives me a sense of where things are with respect to valuation. And because I've been investing here for so long, I have a decent handle in terms of where most of the companies are in terms of their profit, in terms of this measure like ratios, for example, PE, ROE, and so on and so forth. And because I closely follow companies, if I and that's where I'm able to find a good bargain if there is one. Yeah. International market, much I do run screeners. So screeners is a good way to kind of find good value, good investment. I also like Reddit. So Reddit is a good source to generate ideas.
Even for Nepal?
Nepalma less but for international stocks, I think it's a
So
good.
Nepal was a Reddit group, just so our viewers can benefit.
So there are two subreddit for Nepal stocks. One is Nepal stock.
Right.
Other is I think Nepal street bets. I think there's two.
Right.
So I think they have like daily discussion in terms of in terms of various stocks, and
Right.
it's a good read. But internationally, I think Reddit can be a very good source.
Yes.
There's also a site called Corner of Berkshire and Fairfax. It's a membership based forum.
Okay.
And there also you get like stock ideas, investment ideas.
Every morning, I like to start my day with coffee. It helps me focus and get in the zone before I start to work. Recently, I came across this easy-to-drink pouches by Kathmandu Coffee. I personally like the plain espresso, but they have multiple flavors like hazelnut, cappuccino, and chocolate. They're super easy to use. Just stir them, pour them over hot and cold water, and that's it. You're good to go. You can find them in major retail stores like Bharbatini or Big Mart, or in their own store at Lazimpart. If you love coffee, you must definitely try them out.
Okay, so do you find it difficult to work because you do not have a team and because you're generally one person doing this, right? So do you find it difficult to work in a team, or are there people with whom you bounce off ideas or discuss kune stock ko thesis with?
I do discuss my investment thesis with a select group of people,
Right.
whether it's in Nepal or whether I'm investing outside. But for me, मलाई चाहिँ कस्तो लाग्छ भने investing is a personal journey जस्तो लाग्छ क्या. So also investing is the only kind of professional where it's what you know and how you decide to act on that information that you know, right? It makes a difference, right? So a lot of people may know a lot, but if they don't act on that information, then it doesn't really help.
Absolutely.
Right? So investing for me is a really personal journey and a personal experience. Also, in case of investing, knowledge compounds.
Right.
So if I've made a mistake in the past in terms of certain stock, I mean, that mistake would help me down the line in terms of making a better decision
Right.
in the future, right? So it's also like it's also a compounding process where knowledge compounds over a period
Absolutely,
of time,
yes.
and then you become a better investor. I'll just give an example. So I invested in SDL, Himalayan
Right.
Distillery, 2016, 2017, when it was a very illiquid stock in
Yeah.
the market here. It was trading around 500, 600,
True.
right?
Yes.
But as I said, I follow almost all the companies, and I could see when I was following the quarterly reports that the company had no debt. It was growing, its revenue, bottom line, everything was growing. It also had a very good product in a product called Golden Oak.
Right.
So it was very kind of a leading market brand. But despite that, that was not reflected in the valuation back then. So I invested, but the mistake that I did was I sold too early. I sold like 3x or 4x or something like that. But like, and then over a period of time, we went up to like 8,000, and then so like I
Almost 9,000, 8,800
yeah.
or something.
So I think over a period of 5 years or 6 years, it gave a return of I looked at System X, the 35 times 3,500. So it had a return of. So that was kind of with the benefit of hindsight, a mistake of selling too early. In Philippines. 2021 during COVID, I found a similar stock where it was kind of trading around same kind of valuation. Profit was growing, bottom line was growing.
No debt.
No debt, and it's like and I invested at the stock. So I invested at around price of 50 peso. And I'm still holding that stock till now. And I don't want to make the same mistake that I did with SDL of selling too early, right? If a company is doing well, if it's performing well, it's growing its bottom line.
You need to let it run.
Yeah, you need to let it run. And I think that's one thing that I have also kind of the core message of Pulak Prasad book is if you have a good investment, why sell it, right? You don't have to sell it, right? And selling, and when you sell it, you're not making one decision. You have to make a two decision: which stock to sell, and what do you want to buy with that kind of a capital, right? So yeah, again, I think it's that is a kind of a thing that I learned from a personal mistake, and then I am trying to kind of rectify it now with another investment.
So I think sometime back you talked about conviction. And regarding conviction, what I really want to understand next is, do you like when you find a good idea, do you like to concentrate or is the portfolio diversified? What level of concentration have you gone up to? And do you have an idea? Like, do you have something that you can share with us?
Again, usually the way I invest is, so if I like an idea, if I like a stock, I would start to nibble on it.
Yeah.
I would buy maybe like a few hundred stocks and then see how it performs over a few quarters and so on. And I start
That's
gradually
track it, yeah.
and then I'll track it and I'll start kind of gradually holding, increasing my holding in that particular stock. I don't think I've made an investment where like at one shot it's like 25% of my portfolio at one go. So it usually grows over a period of time. In case of this stock that I was talking in the Philippines, I've acquired more stocks after I bought it at like a price of 50, 60 pesos. And now it's trading around 290 or 300 range. And so it's now a substantial portion of my portfolio. Because of because the price has gone up so much.
Yes.
And also I've been buying like over the last few years. So I'm okay with like 30%, 40% of my portfolio.
So do you cut it when it like, if it reaches 40% or 50%? Do you tend to cut it and then move some money to other stocks, or do you just let it run and not care about it because?
Yeah, so I haven't had a situation where a particular stock is at like a 40%. I'd probably have to assess at that particular moment in time in terms of how I should go about it. Yeah, I would probably kind of cut it and then reinvest.
So at any point of time, how many stock are old in your portfolio generally? What's the number that you're comfortable with?
So I have...
and I'm not talking about your 10 kitta or 50 kitta that you just have in your portfolio to track things. So cut it down. So what's that number?
My normal investment portfolio in Nepal has around 8 to 10 stocks, core stocks, where I have like... at least like 5% or more investment. Similarly, in terms of the international markets, I don't tend to kind of over diversify. I tend to concentrate amongst the major kind of ideas that I have. Yeah.
So, in Nepal, do you tend to stay around a specific sector, or what I'm trying to reach is like, do you do top-down investing, ki bottom-up investing? Do you look at sectors and say that I know my sector company few stocks चाहिन्छ, or do you think it's purely bottom up? म banks हो भने म banks मात्र pick up गर्छु, म hydro हो भने as long as the company is undervalued म त्यो pick up गर्छु. What's your take on that?
Mostly I'm a bottom up investor. So 2012 मा जुन बेलामा market gone down like 80%. I think there were a lot of opportunities across all the sectors, right? So you could it was really a stock picker market. So you could pick stock in any sector and then you could get like a very good return. The only time I played the sector was in 2019. So 2019, again, the market was around 1100 levels. It gone down from 1600 in 2016 to 1100 level. And Tubalama, of course, a lot of, many sectors were gone down. But one sector that has really gone down was hydropower.
Yeah.
Hydropower एकदमै नराम्रो narrative थियो त्यो बेलामा हैन. The sector is not investable, a lot of bad companies, and that was reflected in stock prices of almost all the stocks. So त्यो बेलामा चाहिँ I took a contrarian kind of a call and invested in certain hydro stocks. I'll just give an example. AKPL. AKPL ko IPO I think happened in 2016. And like after the IPO, it was trading around 400, 500 range. And then generally, Nepal ko case ma hydro IPO like construction phase mai huncha हैन. And if you look at a hydropower company, the risk is highest when they're like in the construction phase, under construction, right? So a lot of things go wrong, cost overrun, time overrun. various things, right? And once they kind of done with the construction, COD happens, then, I mean, we have a take or pay PPA here. So, I mean, you have a kind of a pretty much assured revenue over the life of the PPA, right? So 2019, the AKPL Co COD happened, I think around October or November of 2019. And the stock was trading at around the range of like 100, 80, 90, 100. So it had gone down for 400 when the risk was high. And then you're like, now the risk is almost minimal, but the stock is trading at like 800, 80 or 90, right? So I invested in AKPL and similar other stocks, like a lot of hydros were trading at around 80, 90, 100 at the time. And it so happened that COVID happened like few months later. And then there was a tailwind that the hydro got, the tailwind of lower interest rate. And also like people's perception that hydro is the one sector that's not affected by the COVID kind of a pandemic, lockdown and so on. And you see all these companies going up to 1,000, 1,500 and so on. So that's when I think I played a sector really well. So that was an example of playing a sector. But apart from that, I'm more of like an individual stock picker from bottom up.
Right. And have you ever tried trading? I mean, Nepal, I'm guessing like 80, 90. I think globally, I know most of the people are traders. People like to look at charts, follow patterns, do all kinds of things. Have you ever tried trading, and what are your views on that?
About trading, I mean, if I buy a stock and then it quickly runs up and I see that the valuation doesn't make sense, I would exit.
Right.
Happened with Shivam, I think 2018, they didn't initial public offering 300, it went to 600, 700 within the period of 3 months. I sold all my exits. So if you call that trading, but I don't follow charts. I don't understand charts, and I don't make a buy and call based on like what the chart is saying. So I've sold stocks few months after buying it. If that's trading, then so be it. But I don't trade on the basis of the price signals.
Okay, great. So Agitapali, you talked about your success in terms of AKPL, right? Do you have one or two maybe success stories that you can share in terms of what have been a good investment process that you followed because of which you got good returns?
So AKPL and Hydro was
one that you've already discussed.
I think 2012, again, I mentioned that almost all the sectors were I mean, the stocks in almost all the sectors were beaten down. I started investing in Seeker Insurance. At the time, it was trading around 400, 300, 400 range, Seeker Insurance. Seeker Insurance, Tio Belama, I mean, you could see that it was probably the best managed non-life insurance companies. They also got a tailwind. There was a regulation saying all of these vehicles need third-party insurance and so on. So Seeker was able to capture on this regulatory kind of tailwind also. And you could see that the company is executing well. Their underwriting standards are good. They're good in terms of expanding their kind of business and so on. So that was a good example of a company that I was able to identify.
More recently?
So more recently, I think Unilever. So if you look at Unilever from 2015-16 till 2022, it was flat. It, in fact, went down. So it was both price correction as well as time. It went up
to, I think, 16,000 or something.
So from 35,000 in 2014, 2015, went down to 16,000, 2021, 2022. Right. There were a lot of reasons for it. The company was not kind of a growing bottom line as well as top line. Also, they had some labor issues around their plant in Makwanpur. So there was like a combination of factors. But 2021, 22 onwards, if you've been following them, you could see that the company was turning around. It's always been a debt-free company, so debt was not an issue with Unilever, right? And in fact, if you look at that, they have a negative working capital, right? So it's a good example of having a float.
Great global management.
So great global management, great brand. So I could see that the company is turning around. So you start to see the revenue increasing, and that reflected in the bottom line. So I invested in Unilever around the 18,000 to 20,000 price range, and it's worked out quite well over the last 2 years. We went up to what 5,500, 55,000 last year. Now it's around 46, 40, 47,000. So that's one example of a stock that recent that I've kind of done well in the context of Nepal.
So we talked about a few successes that you've had. I know. Tell us a little bit about a few failures as well, where maybe your investment thesis was right. I think one example you said is HDL. When it's selling too early, again behavioral ko kura huna sakcha, haina? Tell us if you have an example about a stock where you got the investment thesis wrong, or maybe some of the behavioral bias that affected your buy decision.
So I think two. I would say I would share two. One was I mentioned it was very early days. So one of the stock I'd invested in Nepal was Vivor Bank.
Right.
Yeah. It had an interesting business model, business concept. It was a class B bank, but they were, I mean, directly or indirectly invested in real estate, right? And that, I mean, didn't work out for them. I mean, you're raising deposit, but you're investing in a very illiquid sector. So a classic case of asset liability mismatch. Also, there was other factors, and then the Vivor, I mean, was taken over by central bank. I think it was the first time Rashtra Bank used lender of last resort. So that was one where I lost money. So it was more of my investment thesis being not right, not correct.
Right.
Another example, it's more global. So I don't know whether you know of this company called Valiant Pharmaceuticals.
Yes.
So I
Crazy,
I invested in Valiant. I just blindly followed Bill Ackman.
Okay.
So Bill Ackman was kind of a big time promoter of Valiant Pharmaceutical, and the price had gone down from certain level to almost 50%.
Yeah.
So I thought, like, what could go wrong, right? So I kind of blindly followed, and and then later on it turned out to be kind of almost a fraud, right? And the company almost went.
And they've been raising their drug prices by I think 2,000 something percent and stuff, like
So
life-saving drugs, and got a major backlash.
Yeah.
I think we had a session with Professor Sanjay Bakshi, behavioral biases, and I think he brought your topic regarding Valiant Pharmaceutical. And I think, again, connecting, I mean, investing is such a beautiful discipline. You can connect so many things, right? Agi Paila, you talked about how Costco or Amazon, they're not greedy because what they save, they pass it on to customers so that they extend the longevity of the business. I think Valiant is exactly the opposite, where they hiked up the price for some of these life-saving drugs by 2,000 and 2,500%. Okay? And that got a huge backlash, and the regulator ko attention payo, and then obviously you talked about frauds and these kind of things, and the stock just went poof.
Yeah. So I think those were two kind of mistakes. Of course, there's been mistakes. I think other mistakes have been, as you said earlier, is selling too early.
I just want to add one more thing, right? I think one of the biggest mistakes people have, Nepal it's not so public, but globally, a lot of investors, young investors, Mohnish Pabrai invest gareko cha, Buffett has invested in this stock. What could go wrong? I kind of had that when I was, recommending to my friends Alibaba ko stock, because Charlie Munger ko portfolio ko huge portion of it had been Alibaba ko stock. I don't know about the fundamentals. I never looked into it, but just because someone bought it, it's not a reason for you to buy it. Okay? You need to get into the numbers, see what could go right, go wrong, because even the best of them can be extremely biased, and they could get wrong in the thesis. Okay, so
no, exactly. So
that's a very important point too.
So त्यसमा मलाई, my earlier point of investing is such a personal journey, personal experience. किनभने each, like, even if someone tells you, Buffett tells you and say, like, invest like 100% of your portfolio in a particular stock, what is your life circumstances, right? Like, do you need that money tomorrow, right? Like, I mean, and you don't want to invest like a capital that you probably need in 6 months. So I think it's so you need to like make that assessment on a basis of various factors. And I think the conviction is something that you cannot borrow.
True.
You have to build that conviction, and for that you need to understand the company.
Right. You're mentioning something, and sorry, I just cut you off.
No. I think it was the same point. It's okay.
Right.
Yeah.
So how do you decide to sell off? I think that's another very important question, right? And in Nepal ko contextualize again, do you follow macros, and do macros affect your buying or selling decisions?
So I'll answer the last question first. Do macro affect my buying and selling? Not really. I don't really care about macro. I do follow the macro trend in terms of the headline GDP, inflation, BOP numbers, and so on. But has that kind of made me buy more or buy less? No, not really. Right. Now, in terms of selling, again, I think selling, I've told you, I've made a lot of mistakes in terms of selling too early, and I am trying to learn in terms of like how to master that process. So I think it's the most difficult decision. Again, Pulak Prasad ko book ma ulle ke bhancha bhandekhi, if you have identified a good company, if the company is performing well, why sell?
Right.
And because I mean, as I said earlier, when you sell, you're not just making one decision, you have to make another decision in terms of what to do with that,
next,
right? How do you deploy that capital, right?
Yep.
So oile मेरो philosophy is, I mean, if I don't need capital, if there is not another screaming buy, I would not probably sell it. Oile Nepalma pani, I think most of the companies here are either fairly valued or overvalued.
Yeah.
I manage my own money. I don't have capital
pressure,
call.
yeah.
I don't have investors kind of knocking my door in terms of I need a better return. So I usually don't sell.
Right.
I usually do. So I think last time I changed, like did a drastic change in terms of my portfolio was when I sold some of my stocks to buy Unilever. So that's when I tweaked around my portfolio in a drastic way. Last few years, I mean, even with the market like 3,000 now to 2,600 is being kind of in the swinging in certain range. Although like there are certain stocks that have given good returns, but I usually do not sell. And I think that's one thing that I kind of it's very difficult to explain to another person. A constant query that I get is, "Dai, koile besne," and I my response to that is, why do you want to sell? Do you need capital? If you don't need capital, why do you want to sell? Right.
Yeah.
So
as long as the business is
as long as the business is doing well. But I think that's also a reflection of here. A lot of people are speculators. There are a lot of traders, right?
Yeah.
So what they want to do is they want to make a quick buck in one stock and then jump into another stock.
Yeah, true.
But that doesn't really work. And then people.
You're bound to get it wrong, right? So similar to HDL, I think I made a similar mistake in HDL, right? I'd entered it around 800, and the COVID came. Only within a few days, actually, it had a tailwind. Okay? It went up to 1600, and 1600 mapugi, and I bought this around 2019, and so 2020 might reach 1600, and everything was shut. Factories were closed, shops were closed, and I sold it at that point of time, and I thought that I'll pick it up, because COVID is bound to come and prices will drop. I sold it, and market closed after that, right? So I felt that I did a good job. And when the market opened, there was so much of flush of liquidity that the price moved to, I think, 1700 or 1800, and it got stuck there. I had this anchoring in my mind saying that I don't want to buy it at 1800. And that's it. I just missed that whole ride up to 8,000. Maybe I wouldn't have written to 8,000, maybe 2,000, 3,000, I would have exited. But I missed the whole round because I just wanted to make that quick tune. So maybe 200 rupees call. I actually missed the whole train. Okay? So I think that's something that I keep telling people. And if people tell me, like, don't you trade and stuff, I feel like having dichotomy is the term, I think. Having two different contrarian ideas in your mind at the same time, it leads to cognitive biases. Okay? Cognitive dissonance create garsa. And I completely tend to avoid that personal level. Selling so that you can buy it at a cheaper price in a few months or in a few weeks. I think sometimes because I've had such a bitter experience of missing a multi-bagger based on that, I completely try to avoid that as well.
No, I think also I think, I mean, these experience hopefully would make us a better investors or something like that. I told you I'm
It's
trying
part
to
of the process, eh?
I'm trying to use that as DL experience and not make that same mistake in another company. So
True.
yeah, it's a journey in terms of the whole investing process.
Right. So I'm moving to something which is not directly related to investing, but obviously it influences that thing. How is your day structured? Any तपाईँको reading कसरी structure हुन्छ अनि how do you find time for stocks, having a regular job?
So yeah, I mean, I'm a pretty early morning person. So I get up around 5 o'clock, 5:30. I go for a walk or a run, and then I reach office around 7:30.
Yeah.
And then I come back around 5 o'clock.
Right.
So most of my reading and then like personal investing time usually is after 8. Spending some time with family members. So I read. Lately, I used to be a voracious reader. It's been very difficult to give time to read a book, complete a book, right?
Yeah.
But I still follow Twitter. I follow Reddit regularly. I also read like the likes of FT economists to be aware of what's going on with the market. But I feel that Twitter, I think Twitter can be a good source of information. That's where we met also. We started interacting also. I think Twitter, like-minded people, having that kind of a circle is a good kind of good. If you follow the right people, it can be a very good source of idea. Just to Laxmi, of course, you have to do your own due diligence and so on. But I think Twitter is probably where, in terms of all the different platforms, that's where I spend most of my time. I don't post that much. It's more of like a lurker in Twitter. But yeah, I think that's where I pick up articles. That's where I pick up ideas.
So again, for the value investing community, any good Twitter blogs or websites or these things that you follow? I think you mentioned a few Agi Bakkar pani. Any of these resources that you think people could read or follow, or newspaper or magazines, anything which you think could be useful?
Of course, I think Sanjay Bakshi is a very good kind of resource if you're upcoming value investor. I think you can follow him on Twitter. He's a blog site called Fondu Professor. It's still active. He's not as active as he used to be in terms of posting, but you can go back, and I think that the site has like articles and speeches going all the way from 2005 and so on. So I think that's a good resource. I follow the likes of Vishal Khandelwal. So he's also very good. He used to do podcasts also, so I've also listened that. There's a guy who wrote a book called Richer, Wiser, Happier. I forgot
Robert Greene.
So he's also a good. So he also does podcast. I think that's also a good resource. Lately, I've started listening this podcast called Founders podcast. So David Sharna. So I think it's very good. Amazing.
I love it.
Amazing.
Because there are books that I cannot read. It's on Spotify.
So
there are books that probably I cannot read, there, and he covers these founders. And that's when I actually read about Costco's founder,
Jim Senegal,
and how he was influenced by Soul Price, and and I think so. Walmart was also actually influenced by Soul Price, if I'm not mistaken.
So Walmart, the Price Club was what Soul Price started, right? Soul Price, the whole concept of membership-based store was started by Soul Price. Jim Senegal used to work for Soul Price, and then he ventured out on his own and started Costco. And then Walmart, Sam Walton, I think when he started Sam's Club, which is like the membership version of the Walmart, I was also influenced by Soul Price.
Right. Again, the great resources, right? So again, I want to understand, because a lot of young investors out there, what are the good habits that you need to have in order to become a good, value investor?
It's a good, interesting question. I think reading. I think in general, I think you need to read a lot to to be aware of the market, the companies that you're investing.
Yeah.
Warren Buffett, for example, he used to read like 10, 12 hours a day, right? So most of the days is spent around reading. So I think the most important habit is reading and knowing the company that you've. So when I say reading, not just books, but like it could be annual reports, it could be quarterly reports, it could be various industry report analysis and so on. So I think that's the most kind of important habit for a good value investors.
Right.
If you build around that and have certain technical skills around finance and so on, you can be a good value investor. You can work. You need to work on certain kind of behavioral biases, kind of try to understand those behavioral biases. But I think the most important aspect is reading, reading books, reading annual reports, reading company reports. Yeah.
Right. So again, you work with ADB in terms of developing private sector, and again, you're an investor in personal capacity. What do you think about Nepal's capital markets, right? And what do you think is going to happen over the next 10 years? What's the potential that you see? Or what are the places that you think probably we could improve on?
So I think Nepal capital market has come a long way.
Right.
I started following the market actively from 2008, 2009. From that point to now, I think we've done a lot. We've improved a lot. As I said, 2011, 12 ma 2 crore, 3 crore ko daily turnover huni.
In a bear market, you have 4 to 5 billion.
Right, and then went up to like 30 billion last year. So I think we've been able to improve the market ecosystem. So there are a lot more brokers, there are a lot more merchant banks. So I think that the market has evolved, the market has matured. But having said that, I mean, there's still a lot to be done. I think there's still a lot of regulatory initiatives that needs to be done to improve the market. There's still a lot of insider trading, circular trading that needs the regulator needs to clamp down on. But having said that, I feel that Nepali market is generally in the right direction.
Right.
What I like about Nepal in terms of the market is the equity culture here. Yahako jasto equity culture, I haven't seen, for example, I invest in Philippines, right? They don't have that equity culture.
Right.
The equity
Where general people are interested
exactly.
in the stock market.
Yeah, general
and
people
investing.
are interested. You don't get that. So it's good that we have that equity culture, right? And it needs to be kind of used for I mean, capital market at the end of the day is a good kind of conduit to kind of for
channel
savings into like
the upside participation of the economy.
Exactly, right? So how do we use that through regulatory kind of initiatives, through various kind of instruments towards that? I think that's where I think the regulator and the policymakers need to focus.
I think it's mainly because of I think I've told this to you before as well, right? It's mainly because यो नेपालीहरूलाई जुन 10 किता दिने भन्यो नि त्यो allocation rather than trying to figure out the price. I think it's mainly because of that, because अहिले पनि I think there are close to 8 to 10 lakh demat accounts that apply for these IPOs. So when someone gets it, they don't just exit with that 10 kita, okay? And paila the people used to get these 10 kita, and then you've invested it at 100 rupees and suddenly price moves up to 500 one day and you think, oh, I made 4,000 profit on this 10 kita, and then you're excited, and obviously you don't exit from there. You have a broker account, you have a bank account, you want to try the next bet, right? And I think that's how your equity cultures are Nepal body developed back. I think it's because of that 10 kita at 100 rupees. But again, like I said yesterday, I think that's been one of the major reasons we've been pulled back as well. Because now people have this expectation that kuनै पनि stock चाहिँ 100 रुपैयाँमै list हुनुपर्छ. I mean, there could be a good company like Surya Nepal. Maybe they are interested in less. I don't know, right? So Surya Nepal, जसको book value might be like, let's say 8,000 or 10,000, whatever that number is. And maybe who believe that their intrinsic value is 30,000. Why would they offer 10% or 20% or 30% of their company at 100 rupees? And say, that would never happen, right? So that has been preventing a lot of these good companies from coming into the public domain, okay? अब अलिअलि change भइरहेछ obviously with the premium pricing अनि book building. I understand that it's paused, but eventually the way forward त्यही नै हो हैन. So I think it has had its equity culture, it has had its own share of advantages as well as disadvantages. But like you mentioned, overall the direction of the market has been positive. I think there are more merchant banks coming up, there are more SIFs coming up, private equity आइरहेछ हैन. Hopefully a new stock exchange, which is again a positive thing in my opinion. So यो सबै कुराले मार्केटले चाहिँ अगाडि नै लिएर जान्छ जस्तो लाग्छ in the days to come.
Yeah, I agree. I think, I mean, though market भनेको ecosystem हो हैन. So ecosystem is about like different institutions, different type of initiatives,
Yeah.
different type of investors, retail investors, individual institutional investors, and so on. So हाम्रो like last 15 years ma, that whole ecosystem is slowly but definitely growing, and it's growing in the right direction जस्तो लाग्छ हैन. Of course there are challenges here and there, and नेपालमा मात्र हैन सबै कन्ट्रीमा यो insider trading, circular trading को challenges हरू हुन्छ हैन. It's probably more rampant here, so we need to address that. But having said that, I think the market is growing in the right direction जस्तो लाग्छ मलाई personally.
All right. Mansudai, thank you so much for coming to the podcast and sharing your knowledge with us and with everyone else. We really appreciate it, and hopefully a lot of people can learn from this.
Thank you for having me. I really enjoyed it, and I look forward to your other podcasts. Thanks
Thank
for.